Welcome back to our study in the book of Psalms. Glad to have you joining us. And we are at Psalm 101 already. And the title of our psalm is Song for Our House. And if you need to refer to the outline of the entire book of Psalms, I invite you to drop back and see it at any time. It precedes lessons on all of our psalms thus far. The introduction to this psalm is as follows. This psalm was written by King David. It states that in the prescript. Chronologically, this fits in around 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 12. And the backstory on that is this. David has reigned for 7 years as king over Hebron. He becomes king over all Israel and reigns an additional 33 years. Jebus becomes Jerusalem, thus the great city of David, because he moves the capital basically from Gilgal to there. And so we can say, welcome home, Israel, because it's always been her capital since then. Here is a diagram of David's 33 years of reign over Jerusalem, and this is about where we are chronologically. The outline of this chapter is there's a vow or a promise, there's a venue, the first part of it, there's some virtue in a verse, and then the venue finishes up the second part in the final verse. And so you can see this is not a long psalm, but follow along and you'll catch on to the thought of a prayer for our house or our home. And so here's the vow. David says, I will sing of mercy and judgment. Unto you, O Lord, will I sing. Well, mercy here is goodness and kindness and faithfulness all rolled up. It is made up of those three different attributes. And so we know God is full of goodness and kindness and faithfulness. That makes him a merciful God. And when we are commanded to give mercy, we need to understand that you can see that mercy that we would grant someone or forgiveness, that there would be goodness in our heart and kindness, and there'd be faithfulness, not to ourselves, but to biblical principles in the Lord. And so David sings, I'm singing about this, and of judgment. And judgment is justice or judgment. And as king, I would notate before I discuss Jehovah with you, as king, David's responsibility to his people was mercy and judgment. To be a good king, you had to be a fair judge and rule by the law, but there had to be mercy tempered into there. So the word Lord here in the Hebrew is the word Jehovah, and it means the existing one, the one who has always been. And so a good rule for our homes as well as our nations and our churches and our life is that may we live a life of mercy, but also a life of justice or a right judgment. I will behave myself. I like what he says. My conduct, I'm going to behave myself wisely. And so I'm going to be prudent or circumspect. I'm going to try to understand in a perfect way, or having a perfect heart within me. And when will you come unto me? I will walk within my house with a perfect heart. And so the perfect way is a perfect heart or on life's journey. So David is saying concerning the house of the Lord as well as his home, he says, I need to walk wisely. I need to behave myself. And with understanding in a right heart as I walk through life's journey. And then he talks to the Lord and says, and when will you come unto me? And it matters not because he should walk that way all the time. And he just simply says, whenever it is you come, I will walk within my house with a right heart. Now there's a venue. There's some things that David says. Then there's that little interlude, and then there's one more verse. David says this, I will set no wicked thing before my eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me. So David is talking as king. There are certain sins and evil that he does not want in the empire, and he doesn't want them in his house. And he certainly doesn't want them in the house of the Lord. And so wicked can mean in the Hebrew wicked and or evil, and a thing, it's a speaking thing. It's words of a mouth. He says, I will set no, I don't want anybody speaking evil in front of me before my eyes, or before my jurisdiction as the king and within the empire. And certainly when he goes home within the family, and we go home within our family, we don't want wicked things spoken within our homes or within our churches. And the word turn aside, David says, I hate the work of them that turn aside. They swerve, they turn. And it's talking about concerning the law of God, those that you just can't put your hand on. They keep moving around so much in disobedience and obedience to God's law, you can't catch them. You can't sort of say, hey, here they come. I need to stop them there. And we need to talk, and we need to correct ways. And so it's like they're all over the board. And David makes this promise and makes this statement. He says, I don't want to be that way. It shall not cleave to me. I'm not going to let this stick close to me and stick in my house. This has no place for it whatsoever. Verse 4, a froward heart shall depart from me. That's a crooked or a perverted heart, not a right heart, not a good heart, a merciful heart. I will not know a wicked person. And so the word heart, always in the Bible, I would say almost always, means the inner man. It's not the thing that pumps our blood, but it's what makes you, you, and me, and it's within our man, and that just everything flows through there. And the note that I made here for a reminder is that a froward heart is mentioned again just to show how easy it is to wander. We read about this all throughout the book of Psalms, and how easy it is to depart from the ways and the laws of God that he has set up to us, so that for our betterment, for our happiness, for our joy. And so David says, a froward heart, I don't want it. I don't want to be crooked in the service of the Lord. I will not know. He says, I don't want to know an evil person. Now note, David now lists areas to stay on top of, as whether he's king or dad or husband or friend, he needs to stay on top of these things, and he lists them. And so he says this, whoso privily or secretly, and the first thing is slanders his neighbor. So he says, who's whispering behind? He says, I don't want whispers in court or in my home. And whoever's talking against his neighbor, slandering, saying false things about him, no, him will I cut off. And he says, I'll put an end to that. And then he goes on and makes a second statement, him that has an high look, a very proud look. And the word look means an eye, a proud eye about themselves, the way they carry themselves, the way they look and see. And he says, I don't want any, I won't put up with that. I will not, the word suffer is endure in the Hebrew. He says, I will not endure that, along with the third thing. And he's just talking about a proud heart. And so he says, I don't want to have a proud heart. I don't want people around me that way. And so I don't want people that whisper slanders against my friends and neighbors. And I don't want somebody that thinks they're better than everybody else, and they put on those airs and those looks. And he says, I don't want somebody that walks around that thinks it's all about them. He says, I don't want them in my kingdom. Now, we come across the word virtue. My eyes shall be upon the faithful. This is a great list to have. These are the two godly characteristics that he looks for in his kingdom, and he wants them. We need these in our home and in our churches, in our nation. He says, my eyes shall be upon the faithful of the land. Faithful is not exclusive to someone that's faithful to their wife or someone who is faithful to work and puts in a hard day, honest day's work. It's talking that somebody that emanates from their heart, it's not that they're faithful in an event or in one aspect, but it is faithfulness, meaning it just permeates your life. And so David says, I'm looking for people that they're just faithful in everything they do and who they come in contact with, that they may dwell with me. He says, these are the people I want around me. I can trust these people. And then the second thing he states is this: he that walks in a perfect or a maturing or a drawing closer to things of the Lord way. He says, I'm looking for someone that is faithfulness. And he says, I want somebody that in life's journey, they are maturing, that they're willing to learn, that they're willing to change and to move towards the Lord and move towards the King to serve him better. He says, this is what I want. And would our government be based on that and who we surround ourselves instead of paying off political favors? How sad. Then the final part of the venue that he says, here's some more that I don't want around me. He says, he that works deceit or treachery shall not be within my house. So you got the people that are working behind his back. He says, I do not want them. I won't put up with them. And the last thing he says, he that tells lies shall not tarry in my sight. And so liars, people you cannot trust. So in reality, there are four things that David did not want in his kingdom or in his house. But he gave us two very powerful ones that if he would surround himself with them, they would help him keep these four out. And whenever you're looking for a worker or to hire someone, if you're an employer or in your church, surround yourself with people that are faithful, the people that are true and walk in truthfulness, and tell people that want to mature and fit in and will work together with you. So this is sort of like an unusual psalm. David goes on and he ends it, I will early destroy all the wicked of the land, that I may cut off all wicked doers from the city, and talking about Jerusalem of the Lord. So he said, what's at stake is the nation. And he says, I've got to be willing, and I will cut off people that are evil doers. What they're thinking and saying they become acts. And he said, we cannot put up with that in the city of the Lord. So thank you for listening in and watching the video, and I appreciate it a lot. May God bless you, and I hope there's been some helpful things for you today. If you're reading and listening to these in order like I'm doing them, Psalm 102 is next, and Lord willing, I'll see you for then.